Emma had always believed that love could weather any storm. She and her husband David had built a comfortable life in their cozy suburban home. Nothing extravagant, but enough to feel secure. They laughed over coffee in the mornings, shared little jokes in the evenings, and had dreams they whispered to each other late at night. Everything felt steady, predictable, and safe. Until the day the letters came. It started with a notice on the kitchen table. Emma glanced at it without thinking, assuming it was just another routine bill. But as she unfolded it, her stomach sank. The balance due was astronomical, far beyond anything they had ever owed. Her hands trembled as she read it again, hoping she was mistaken. She wasn't. Their savings, their careful planning, everything seemed suddenly fragile, like a house of cards ready to collapse. Emma felt a flicker of panic rise, but she swallowed it, trying to steady her voice when David walked in. "David, we need to talk," she said softly. His eyes, warm and confident moments ago, narrowed slightly at her tone. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern shadowing his face. She handed him the letter, and for the first time in years, the silence between them wasn't comfortable. It was heavy, filled with an unspoken fear. David's jaw tightened, and he ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know it was this bad," he murmured. Neither of them spoke for a long minute, the ticking clock louder than any words. In that moment, Emma realized that the life they thought was secure was suddenly fragile, and trust, the foundation of everything, would be tested like never before. Over the next few days, tension crept into every corner of their home. Emma noticed the way David would stare at bills with furrowed brows, or how he avoided discussing their finances altogether. She felt a mix of frustration and fear. Frustration because he wouldn't share the burden, and fear because she didn't know how deep the problem ran. She tried to stay calm, offering solutions, suggesting cutting back, and even working extra hours at the local bookstore. But David seemed distant, lost in thoughts he refused to voice. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees and painted their living room in shades of gold, Emma finally spoke up. "David, I can't do this alone. We promised each other honesty, remember? We can't fix what we don't face together." Her voice cracked, the weight of weeks of worry spilling over. David sank into the sofa beside her, his head in his hands. I wanted to protect you. I thought I could handle it myself, but now," he trailed off, voice thick with shame. Emma reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. "We're a team," she whispered. "Always. But you have to let me in." In that small, tense moment, they realized that survival wasn't just about money. It was about trust, communication, and holding on to love when everything else threatened to unravel. The following week brought a mixture of hope and anxiety. Emma and David sat at the kitchen table every evening, sorting through bills, phone calls, and loan statements. It was exhausting emotionally and physically, but slowly they started to make a plan. David, who had always been the quiet problem solver, began opening up about where things had gone wrong. Some poor investments, some overlooked expenses, and a few unexpected medical bills. Hearing it all laid bare was painful for Emma, but it also strengthened her resolve. She realized that their love wasn't about perfection. It was about facing the worst together and refusing to let it destroy them. One night, after a particularly long day of negotiations and calls to creditors, David slumped onto the couch beside her. His eyes were heavy with fatigue, but there was a spark of relief. "I don't know if we can fix everything quickly," he said softly, "but at least we're facing it together. And that feels lighter somehow." Emma smiled, her hand brushing his cheek. "We'll figure it out," she whispered. "Step by step. One day at a time." And for the first time since the letters arrived, they felt a flicker of hope. They understood that rebuilding wasn't just about money. It was about patience, trust, and remembering why they had chosen each other in the first place. Despite their careful planning, there were still moments when fear gripped them. Every unexpected bill or late payment felt like a test of their resolve. Emma sometimes caught herself lying awake at night, imagining the worst, while David would sit silently in the living room, crunching numbers until his eyes blurred. But in those moments of quiet despair, they learned a powerful truth. They didn't have to be perfect to survive. They just had to rely on each other. One Saturday morning, Emma found David in the garden, staring at the small vegetable patch they had planted together. He looked up, a tired smile on his face. "You know," he said, "we might be broke in the bank, but somehow I feel richer than ever." Emma laughed softly, sitting beside him. "Richer because we still have each other?" she asked. He nodded. "Exactly. Money can disappear, bills can pile up. But this trust, this love, we can't lose it unless we let it go." In that simple sunlit moment, Emma realized that the crisis had changed them. It hadn't just tested their love. It had strengthened it, teaching them that no matter how heavy life's burdens might be, facing them together made every step lighter. Weeks passed and slowly, the weight on their shoulders began to feel manageable. Emma took on extra shifts at the bookstore, sometimes returning home with tired feet and a mind buzzing with numbers. David started attending free financial workshops online, learning how to stretch every dollar and make small gains without risking more. It wasn't glamorous and it wasn't easy, but together they were rebuilding. Each small victory, an unexpected rebate, a successfully negotiated bill, or even just a quiet evening without arguments, felt monumental. One evening while they were preparing a simple dinner together, Emma noticed David staring at her with a faraway look. "What is it?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then said, "I never realized how much I relied on my own pride before. I thought asking for help made me weak. But it's taught me that strength isn't about handling everything alone. It's about leaning on the person you love, and letting them lean on you too." Emma's eyes glistened with tears. She reached across the counter and took his hand, squeezing it firmly. "That's exactly it," she whispered. And in that quiet kitchen, amid the aroma of simmering soup, they felt a deeper connection. One forged not in comfort, but in struggle and mutual trust. Despite their renewed hope, life had a way of testing them in unexpected ways. One afternoon, Emma received a call from the bank, a sudden review of their mortgage account. Panic gripped her as she glanced at David. His face was calm but serious, and she knew the day they had feared might finally be here. They spent hours going through paperwork, cross-checking every payment, every statement, every note from the bank. The tension was almost unbearable, each tick of the clock echoing through the small living room. When the call finally ended, David let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "We're okay," he said quietly, relief washing over his face. Emma collapsed onto the couch beside him, tears slipping down her cheeks. "We really did it," she murmured. "Together." For a long time they just sat there, holding hands, letting the silence carry the weight of everything they had endured. In that moment they understood something profound. Life would continue to throw challenges their way, but with trust, patience, and love, no obstacle could truly break them. Their bond had been tested, stretched, and strengthened, and they had come out stronger on the other side. The days that followed were quieter, but Emma and David both noticed a subtle shift in themselves. They laughed more freely over small victories, a perfectly cooked dinner, a bill paid on time, a week without a financial hiccup. The crisis had left scars, yes, but it had also given them a clarity they hadn't had before. They could feel each other's strengths and weaknesses more intimately, and the trust they rebuilt was no longer fragile. It was resilient, like steel tempered in fire. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, David turned to Emma. "Do you remember how scared we were when we first saw those letters?" he asked softly. Emma nodded, her hand finding his. "I do. And I remember thinking, I don't know if we'll make it." He smiled faintly, squeezing her hand. "But look at us now. We're not just surviving. We're stronger than ever. Not because of money, but because we faced it all together." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer air. They didn't need grand gestures or sudden windfalls, just the quiet, steadfast presence of each other. Even as life began to stabilize, small challenges kept arriving, reminding them that growth was ongoing. Emma had moments of doubt, fearing a setback, while David occasionally wrestled with old habits of handling everything alone. But now they talked always. They shared their fears, their plans, their successes, and their mistakes. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was carried alone. Each conversation, each shared worry, strengthened the bond between them, turning what once had been a source of tension into a wellspring of connection. One rainy afternoon, they found themselves laughing in the kitchen, a small leak in the ceiling dripping onto a bucket below. Instead of frustration, they embraced the chaos together. Emma quipped. "Well, at least we're not dealing with bills right now." David chuckled, shaking his head. "No, we're dealing with teamwork. And that's worth far more than money." And in that simple, ordinary moment, they realized that the life they had built, with all its struggles, was theirs in the truest sense. The crisis hadn't just tested their marriage. It had transformed it, proving that trust, patience, and love could turn even the hardest trials into a foundation stronger than they had ever imagined. Months passed, and Emma and David began to notice the fruits of their perseverance. The bills that once seemed insurmountable were slowly being cleared, their savings gradually growing, and the constant tension in the house was replaced with a quiet confidence. But more than the financial recovery, it was the emotional transformation that mattered most. They had learned to communicate without fear, to share burdens without shame, and to celebrate small victories as if they were grand triumphs. Every step forward was a testament to their commitment to each other. One evening, after finishing a particularly challenging week of budgeting and calls, David looked at Emma with a soft smile. "Do you know what I've realized?" he asked. Emma tilted her head, curiosity sparking in her eyes. "It's that we don't need to have everything perfect. We just need to be honest, present, and patient with each other. That's what makes life beautiful." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest. "I think we finally understand what real partnership means," she whispered. And in that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of their home, they felt a peace they hadn't known in years. A peace built not on wealth or security, but on unwavering trust and love. Life continued with its ups and downs, but Emma and David faced every challenge with newfound resilience. When an unexpected car repair arose or a friend needed a loan, they handled it together, weighing decisions, discussing options, and never letting fear drive a wedge between them. Their relationship had been tested to its core, and the test had revealed strengths they hadn't known existed. Trust had become their armor, communication their compass, and love their guiding light. One night after a long day, Emma and David sat on the porch sipping tea in silence. The sky was dotted with stars, and the world seemed calm after months of turmoil. David turned to Emma, taking her hand gently. "I think the hardest part wasn't the money," he said quietly. "It was realizing how much we relied on each other, and then learning how to truly be there for one another." Emma smiled, her eyes shining. "We've come so far, and I wouldn't trade any of it. Not the struggle, not the fear, not the late nights. Because it brought us here stronger, closer, and wiser." In that serene moment, they both knew that no crisis could ever undo what they had built together. The following spring, the household felt lighter, almost as if the air itself had changed. Emma found joy in small things again. Watering the garden, baking bread, even organizing old photographs. David, too, seemed transformed. He laughed more openly, offered gentle encouragement instead of quiet worry, and embraced life's uncertainties with a steady confidence. They began planning small trips, imagining future projects, and even dreaming again about a modest vacation they had postponed for years. The financial storm was no longer a shadow over their lives. It had become a memory, a reminder of how far they had come together. One afternoon, as they were walking through a nearby park, David stopped and turned to Emma. Do you remember how hopeless we felt last year? He asked, eyes tracing the horizon. Emma nodded, feeling a shiver at the memory of sleepless nights and constant tension. It feels like a lifetime ago, she said softly. But it also taught me the most important thing, David continued, squeezing her hand. That no matter how hard life gets, facing it together makes everything bearable. And even meaningful. Emma smiled, leaning into him. I feel the same. We didn't just survive the storm. We found each other all over again. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow around them, a perfect mirror of the warmth now surrounding their hearts. As months turned into a year, Emma and David noticed subtle changes in themselves and in each other. Arguments that once felt explosive were now tempered with patience. Worries that might have driven a wedge between them were met with collaboration rather than resentment. They had discovered a rhythm, a silent understanding that didn't require constant words, yet communicated volumes. Love, they realized, wasn't only about passion or comfort. It was about endurance, empathy, and unwavering support. One quiet evening they sat together on their porch, the sun setting in brilliant hues of pink and gold. David wrapped his arm around Emma, and she rested her head on his shoulder. You know, she whispered, I think we've learned something priceless. Life will always throw challenges our way, but trust and love can turn even the hardest times into strength. David kissed her forehead gently. Exactly. And now, no matter what comes next, I know we'll face it together without fear. In that moment, surrounded by the soft chirping of birds and the fading light of day, they understood that their journey through crisis had not only preserved their marriage, it had transformed it into something deeper, stronger, and unbreakable. A year later, Emma and David reflected on how much had changed. The house still had its imperfections, the bills still arrived, and life still had its daily challenges, but nothing felt overwhelming anymore. They had grown into a partnership that could withstand storms, small or large. Emma often caught herself smiling at the mundane. David sipping coffee quietly in the morning, the way he remembered little details she mentioned days ago, the way he always made sure she felt supported. And David noticed her laughter returning, the spark in her eyes, the warmth that filled their home despite any obstacle. They had rebuilt not just their finances, but their hearts and their trust brick by brick. One rainy evening, while sorting through old letters, Emma came across a note she had written to herself months earlier, on the night the first letter arrived. We can survive anything if we do it together, it read. She showed it to David, who smiled and nodded, eyes glistening. We've proven it, he said softly. Not just to ourselves but to each other. And that's worth more than any savings, any paycheck, any measure of comfort. They held hands across the table, feeling the quiet power of their journey. It was a journey that had tested their love, their patience, and their courage, and had emerged triumphant, leaving them stronger and more connected than they had ever imagined. Spring turned into summer, and the home was filled with a sense of calm achievement. They celebrated small milestones together, paying off a debt, a surprise bonus from Emma's job, a day free of worry or tension. But more importantly, they celebrated their resilience, their teamwork, and the depth of their bond. The financial crisis had been a crucible, shaping them, teaching them lessons that no ordinary day could have. Emma often caught herself marveling at their journey. The nights spent planning, the tough conversations, the tears, and the laughter. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry of their renewed marriage. One evening, as they watched the sun dip behind the horizon, David turned to Emma and said, I think we've learned the most valuable lesson of all. Life will never be perfect, but our trust and love can be. Emma smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. And that's what makes all the difference, she whispered. Together they sat in silence, feeling the warmth of shared experience, knowing that whatever challenges awaited, they would face them side by side. Their marriage, once tested to the brink, now stood unshakable, rooted in honesty, strengthened by struggle, and illuminated by love. Years later, Emma and David often looked back on that difficult period with a mixture of gratitude and awe. The letters that had once brought panic and despair now seemed almost like a gift. A harsh but honest teacher that had forced them to confront not just their finances, but themselves and each other. They had learned that love wasn't just about romantic gestures or easy days. It was about showing up, listening, sharing burdens, and trusting even when fear threatened to dominate. Every late night, every tear, every small victory had stitched them closer together. One quiet evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sky painted with shades of twilight, David squeezed Emma's hand gently. "Do you remember how hopeless it felt back then?" he asked softly. Emma nodded, a gentle smile curving her lips. "I do," she said. "But I also remember this, how we chose each other every day, even when life seemed impossible." David leaned closer. "That's what made all the difference. Not the money, not the circumstances, us. We faced it together, and we came out stronger." Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a profound sense of peace. Their journey had taught them that challenges weren't meant to break love. They were meant to reveal it, deepen it, and transform it into something enduring. And in that quiet moment, with the last rays of the sun fading, they knew they were ready for whatever life would bring next, together.